Rex is very confident. He will walk into that room. The question that I would have is, does he have his ducks in a row? Meaning, does he have a staff picked out? Does he know what he wants to do? Can he work with the general manager? I mean, there's a million different things. Now, if they decide to keep Phil Savage as the GM, Phil knows him from his days in Baltimore. So they have a relationship. I think half of the fan base would love it and half of the fan base would hate it. But I think that the one thing that I could say from the seat that I am sitting in, it would be interesting. It would be fun.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Rex Ryan. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, you see what I'm talking about? We can bring all those things back. It'd be awesome. And I just think that, it's interesting when he sits in there and whether or not they see a different person than the one that they fired. And has he changed much? Has he refined his message a little bit more? I don't know. I don't really know what Woody is looking for right now. You and I think we feel like we know what they need. They're not going to listen to us. We're not a part of that 33rd team.
No.
But
Mike Tannenbaum is, who worked with Rex. Like, I really love to hear.
They also worked at ESPN together.
Yeah, for sure.
So they know each other, and they probably really like each other. And it's unfortunate that thing went by the wayside when it did. But it's interesting. I wonder if Rex walks in there. Like most coaches that are prepared will walk in there with their own playbook. And what I mean by playbook, I'm not just talking about offensive and defensive plays and schemes and schematics. I'm talking about everything from, you got to be buttoned up because there's so many things that you have to deal with. And one of my buddies in the NFL was telling me, was trying to tell me again yesterday that the head coach of a football team is like the CEO, and that guy needs a right-hand person. And he used that as an example. You remember Bill Belichick had Burge, Nigerian.
Yeah, of course.
Burge actually started with the Jets when I was there. And then he ended up going with Bill up to New England and became his right-hand man and handled everything for Bill. When Bill wanted something done in the building, Burge handled it. If somebody wanted to interview Bill, Burge handled it. He was like the right-hand man to the head coach. And, to handle all the mundane decision-making crap that had to go on. And then as Burge and Bill's relationship grew, Burge knew exactly what Bill would want or wouldn't want. And you got to wonder whether or not Rex has somebody in his life that can do that for him, because that's a big part of this job that nobody sees. I mean, it's everything from what kind of carpet do you want in the locker room, what kind of sayings you want on the wall, how do you want to travel, when do you want to eat, what are the expectations?
See, I'm not worried about any of that for Rex Ryan if he comes back, because he's done it before. He did it successfully, and I'm sure that he will have someone like that, and he is someone who is not going to be waffling on decisions and vacillating on rug colors. Like, this is what we're doing, that's what we're doing. The thing that worries me about Rex is who that offensive coordinator is, and can he adapt to what the NFL is today? Is he going to go back and try to do ground and pound with a quarterback who can't throw? Because that's not going to work.
It all depends on who his quarterback is, as to whether or not they're going to go back to ground and pound. Like, I thought, Mark Sanchez had a chance to be really good here, but, they never really let him grow. They only stifled him as he was here. But, they did go to two AFC championship games with him. And, he took him into the playoffs. And a lot of that was because Rex was the personality. Mark's personality was not the alpha male personality you'd like to have at your quarterback position. As a matter of fact, there's very few of them in the NFL. Let's be honest. There's probably about 8 of them.
Yeah.
And, it's really hard to find that guy. And the Jets thought they had that guy in Aaron Rodgers. And maybe if Rex said he would clean out Aaron Rodgers and get rid of him. Mm-hmm. He has been very open about that publicly. So, according to Woody Johnson, he said that whoever the next head coach and GM are, they will decide whether or not they want Aaron Rodgers back next year.
Sure, and I feel like he really had to say that after all the reporting that was going on about him being the general manager. So if he came out after all those athletic reports and was like, you know what, I'm going to make the decision on Aaron Rodgers and not let the new guys that I hired do it, I mean, it would have been, absolute explosion of negativity, again, that the Jets don't need. But, Rex is of all the guys that are out there that have been interviewed or on the list, and there's been a ton of them, as the Jets just have been putting out requests for everybody, as they should. There's 2 guys on there that fit the criteria that I want to see them hire. One is Rex Ryan, the other is Brian Flores. Other than that, I mean, Vrabel, they already interviewed. We're going to put him aside because we don't think he's coming here.
Right.
But of the guys that are now a possibility, those are the two of them. So I really don't hate the idea. I still probably wouldn't do it, but Woody's got to understand, if it's not Rex, it's got to be the next Rex. Maybe you don't go back in time and say, like, I'm going to go date the ex-girlfriend. You find the new girlfriend that's got the qualities of the ex-girlfriend but doesn't have the craziness that the ex-girlfriend had as well.
Yeah, I know. But, that's a very interesting analogy.
Yeah.
I will say that they say, well, I'm not going to say it. So,
well, why not? Well, say what?
Don't they say sex with your ex is the best?
Yeah, I've heard that before. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the thing about Rex. He's been on this PR run now for a good month and a half.
He's throwing everything at it.
Like, he's throwing, like, I'm the best guy for it. I bleed jet green. I know the Jets. I am the Jets.
It's not the same old Jets.
Yeah, see, not the same old Jet. That kind of stuff is very attractive, if you will.
Yeah.
And I would think that he's going to walk in there and he's going to see Woody and Christopher and Jaime and Phil Savage, and he's going to walk in and he's going to say, look, man, I know what this team needs. It needs a burst of energy. It needs credibility. It needs an attitude. And I brought you an attitude once before, and I'll do it again.
And is it okay to touch him again?
Yeah, okay, whatever. But I'm just saying that's exactly what he's going to be telling Woody and Christopher, that nobody that you bring into this building is going to be the Jet head coach like I will be the Jet head coach, because I've done this before. I know what it takes. And you know what? I will get this team, and I will get this team rocking and rolling. Now, the other thing, too, about him is that, he's got a number of disgruntled players in this team. You can say whatever you want about the roster and how good it is, but there are a number of guys that don't want to be here next year. I know for a fact that a numerous number of young players, want out of here.
Well, Garrett Wilson's got to be at the top of that
Sauce
list.
Gardner, Garrett Wilson, a lot of these guys, Breece Hall.
Yeah.
And a lot of this is probably a little bit of grandstanding internally because they want contracts, but Garrett Wilson's not getting a new contract until after next year. So, and I think he feels like he's been stifled. Like, his numbers are good, but are they truly great, like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson? And he thinks of himself in that classification. And he feels like he's been hamstrung by the quarterbacks he's played with. And because, Aaron Rodgers, as much as they seem to get along, once Davante Adams came here, who did Aaron Rodgers favor?
Well, of course, Davante Adams.
Right, exactly. So I just... I think Rex would be the personality that would walk into that room and tell these guys, look, man, I don't care about what happened before. I don't care about anything. We are starting new. We are going forward, and we are going aggressive. And I think the players would love that. They would love to hear that.
Yeah, I think he'll probably interview better than anybody, I would imagine.
You would think so.
You would go in there and then light the place up, and everybody would leave with a smile on their face. It's just... would any of the other 31 teams even consider bringing him in to be the head coach?
I don't know, but I could see him hiring Wink Martindale as his defense coordinator, assuming that they get along.
Okay, but I think that's an important question. What I just asked is the fact that I don't think another team would even sniff Rex Ryan.
No, I don't think so.
And what does that mean for the Jets if they ended up seriously considering him? It just feels really strange.
Feels Jet-esque.
It does. So that's why I'm torn with it. I officially would not hire Rex again, but I do like the idea of them being drawn to that type of personality. But you got to find the right guy for 2025 with that right personality.
Well, we both feel that it has to be that type of guy. It can't be a Bobby Slowick out of Houston.
No. And if it is,
it's not going to be Ben Johnson out of Detroit.
Right, and he's not going to come here anyway. But why do you know, and people that you've spoken to, why Jon Gruden isn't on any of these lists? Like, the Jets are interviewing everybody. I mean, Mike Kafka, for God's sakes, is getting an interview out in Chicago, and Jon Gruden's not getting any interviews?
Well, basically what we've seen and what we've heard, and most of the insiders have reported this, is nothing that I'm reporting or saying. I did tell you about 6 weeks ago that there's no question that Jon Gruden wants back in. He's been offered, I think he was offered an offensive coordinator job, which he turned down, I believe. And I also believe that there are teams, and what's being said out there by everybody else, that there are teams doing their due diligence on him.
Okay.
Whatever that due diligence is, I think a lot of it has to do with the emails that came out of the Washington situation with Daniel Snyder. And, he feels like, he still has a lawsuit against the NFL and I think against the Raiders. And there's a lot of that stuff that's still hanging out there. And what is going to be like the next, let's say they hired Jon Gruden. What would be the first 2 months of stories about Jon Gruden?
Yeah, I don't think it would be 2 months. It would definitely be the first week or so. There would be no doubt about it. I mean, for crying out loud, you see how fast the news cycle is now, not just in sports, but in news, and things just get moved on from so quickly. So I do think it'll be a few days up to a week about that stuff.
Does Woody Johnson, Christopher Johnson, do they have the absolute stones that Dave Portnoy has to hire him?
Probably not. And I also think there is something, because if you look at those emails, Roger Goodell was a major target of Jon Gruden's, and I would not be surprised if these owners are going to Goodell and say, hey, what do you think if I bring in Gruden for an interview? And Goodell can't tell him no, but he could also give them an indication of like, I would prefer if you did not. That could be a thing too.
I mean, I don't see that. I don't see Roger being that petty. I honestly don't see him being that petty.
Jon Gruden called him an anti-football P word in one of those emails.
I know, but I don't see him being that petty. I mean, that's part of the slings and arrows that you have to take when you're one of these commissioners. You know that.
Yeah,
and that's why
it's one thing coming from the fans, is another thing coming from Jon Gruden, who's trying to get back into the club and everything.
You don't think that given all the stuff that the NFL has been through over the last 10 years, all the racial strife, all the different things, all the woke policy, everything that they have gone through the last 10 years, you don't think that Roger Goodell hasn't heard it from an owner or a coach or a general manager in some way, shape, or form? You don't think that Jerry Jones is questioning everything that Roger Goodell does?
Right, but we're not. But it's another thing for it to be public and for all of us to consume it. If you want to have a private conversation and Jerry Jones is undressing Roger Goodell and calling him all sorts of names, we don't know about that. I know exactly what Jon Gruden called Roger Goodell, and that's more embarrassing for Roger Goodell. So I would hope that he would be over it. I would hope he wouldn't be that petty, but I'm trying to find the reason why Jon Gruden, who's available.
Because of those emails and the words that he used. That's why. That's why.
But there's so many second chances in sports.
But this is why teams are supposedly doing homework on Jon Gruden.
Yeah, but it's getting to that point now where everybody's getting these requests. The season is over, and he's not attached to anybody. So to me, he's not getting a job.
Which I think would be unfortunate, because I think that, yes, you're right. A guy does deserve second chances. And, a guy's fighting for the league, fighting for players. A couple of those players that he drafted out there had huge red marks over their heads. And it turned out that those red marks became a thing in their lives and in the success of his football team. He took chances on players. And he was willing to take chances on players and give players second chances like Antonio Brown and people like that, and really try to help players to become the best player they could be and the best human being they could be, all while behind the scenes complaining about certain things that the NFL was doing.
Sure. Now, if it's not Gruden, if it's not Flores, if it's not Rex.
Who is it?
If it's not Vrabel.
Aaron Glenn.
Then I guess Aaron Glenn would be the next one. And I just, once again, would not advise him to take his first head coaching job here.
I would just say the Lions have the inside track to go to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And imagine Aaron Glenn standing on that Super Bowl podium, holding up that Super Bowl trophy as the defense coordinator of the best team in the league from start to finish. If, in fact, they could beat the Chiefs, who I think they're going to end up being playing. That would be quite the resume builder. That would be quite the look. And I think he would be, if he didn't get the job this year because they would go so late into February, he would definitely get a job next year.
Yeah, but the Jets' job is open now. They got to hire somebody.
But what I'm saying is that the Jets, they got to move quickly. I think, there's a lot of things that are going on here. When you're hiring a new general manager, and depending on whether or not you like your scouting staff or a new general manager comes in, does he know anybody in the building? Does he have any contacts in the building? Does he know the scouts that are out on the road? Or does a new general manager want to bring in his whole staff, his whole new staff with him? That means a lot of people are losing jobs, and whatever was done prior to the draft, now all of a sudden has to be redone again?
Yeah. I mean, I guess.
I mean,
if that's the route.
I will say a lot of times these owners will hold on to their scouting staffs and everything else until after the draft and then let the general manager go and rebuild his own staff the way that he wants, because we're so deep into now the offseason for these teams that did not make the playoffs. All the college games are done. So all of that kind of scouting has been done. All of those reports have been handed in. And now comes the Senior Bowl and the East-West Shrine Bowl and then all the different interviews and the combines and everything else to add on to all of the tidbits that have been put through.
Yeah, they got to hire a GM is basically what we're talking about.
Exactly.
They're like, now they got to hire a GM. And I remember the Jets did that a few years ago. They had Mike McCagnon do the draft and then fired him afterwards.
Right, because he put all the work in. And all the work is done during, Joe Shane has already done most of his scouting work.
Yeah.
Now comes the hard part, trying to figure out.
Trying to get it right.
Get it right, exactly. And are we going to take Shedeur Sanders with the third overall pick? Is he going to be there? And if he's not there, then what are we going to do? I mean, there's so many moving parts for these guys to figure out. And this is why I'm thinking, with the Giants' huge hole at quarterback next year, week 8, if we're here at 1-7, what the hell do you think is going to be bantied about?
Well, same exact thing as this year. It'll be an exact same duplicate copy of what we dealt with in 2024.
Especially if John Mara and Steve Chish say playoffs or bust.
Yeah, which I don't think that they did, but it's really more about progress. It's about the quarterback. Who is playing quarterback and how is it going? I mean, that's really what it's going to come down to.